you can only be the best plastic surgeon. You can't also be the best accountant. You cannot be the best CFO, the best marketing person. You can't take on all these hats.
Hello and welcome to Beauty and the Biz, where we talk about the business and marketing side of plastic surgery. I'm your host, Catherine Maley, author of Your Aesthetic Practice, What Your Patients Are Saying, as well as consultant to plastic surgeons to get them more patients and more profits. Today's special guest is Dr. Dan Hatef, a board-certified plastic surgeon in solo practice located in Nashville, Tennessee, and he's had that practice for the past 11 years. Now, Dr. Hatef completed his medical training at University of Maryland School of Medicine, his residency at Baylor College of Medicine, and then 2 fellowships at both of those institutions. He also completed 12 observerships with top plastic and facial plastic surgeons throughout the U.S., and we'll talk more about that. Dr. Hatef has published book chapters and many publications and is a member of several local, state, and national medical organizations. Dr. Hatef, thank you so much for joining me on Beauty and the Biz.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Sure. So what we normally talk about is now you've gone through medical training, you've gone through residency, now you have to go through fellowship. And it looks like you went the more research side of fellowship rather than like a marketing and business side of fellowship, or like joining someone's practice. What was that like?
Yeah, so basically, I did a fellowship in plastic surgery because I actually did match out of medical school. Graduated in 2004, and that was maybe one of the most competitive years that we've had in what is the most competitive specialty. And so Paul Manson sent me down to Larry Sargent. I spent a year in Chattanooga, UT Chattanooga, with Dr. Sargent and Dr. Brzezinski, and did a prelim year there. And the plan was to stay for general surgery, but during that time, I was recruited back to UT Southwestern, where I'd rotated as a medical student, did a bunch of mission trips with Craig Hobart and Amanda Gosman, and ended up doing 3 years at UT Southwestern. And then they sent me to Houston to train with Larry Ollier, who had graduated from UT Southwestern, and Dr. Sam Stahl. I love rhinoplasty, and I'd seen how everybody did things in Dallas, and so I was excited to see how people did things in Houston. So I kind of took a different route. I went straight into practice after my chief resident year at Baylor. And because I'd had those fellowship years and really, hit the ground running when I got to my integrated plastic surgery residency, my chief year was like a fellowship. Now, what I'd say to most graduating plastic surgery residents is if you want to go into private practice, it's probably best to do a year fellowship either with one of the ASAPS fellowships, the Aesthetic Society, or American Board of Facial Plastic Reconstructive Surgery fellowships. And it's not necessarily technically because, they're getting a lot of great experience, and I'm sure that they can come out and be a good plastic surgeon. It's really more for the business side. I think that's the one thing that kind of smacked me in the face when I got into the real world was how tough it is to run a practice, especially nowadays. I mean, I think back in the day, you had a mom and pop shop, dad was a plastic surgeon and mom was a nurse, and you got a front desk person and hit the ground running. But, things have changed a lot since those times. And although that model, I think, still can work, things are a little more complex now. And so I think doing a year with a guy or a number of guys and girls who understand the business side and can help you really kind of get situated in the market that you're eventually going to end up in is really, really helpful.
So true, because so many have didn't get any of that business and marketing under their belt during any
zero.
Yeah. So you have to figure that out on the fly, or you have to join a multi-physician practice for a while until you get your feet wet, or you have to, what did you do? How did you end up in private practice?
So basically, I thought I was going to go into academics the whole time with all the fellowships and publications, and I love craniofacial surgery. I always thought I'd be like an aesthetic orthognathic surgeon growing up, and thought I'd go to Vanderbilt. But when I was graduating residency, I talked to Bruce Shack, who was a chairman at that time at Vanderbilt, and he said, Dan, we're in a hiring freeze because Vanderbilt had gotten into some issues with Medicare. And so they couldn't hire me, and we had already committed to going to Nashville, and being young and naive was probably a good thing. I was like, oh, just go to Nashville and start a practice. And so, just look for space and leased out a space. And I was blessed to find a space in a med spa. And so that helped me get my foot in the door. And when I was in probably my into my first year of practice, Christina O'Shaughnessy, who's a really great plastic surgeon here in Nashville, her daughters were getting to their teenage years, and she wanted to spend more time with them. So she was stepping away, and she said, "Hey, Dan, I work with Pat Whitworth, who's this world-renowned breast cancer surgeon, and we're doing all this like back then nipple sparing mastectomy and immediate breast reconstruction was pretty cutting edge and I I took a step away from just doing aesthetics, and I thought, well, let me help out Christina and Dr. Whitworth, and stepped in and really did a lot of great breast work with Dr. Whitworth. It helped me not only get busier as a surgeon and really start to understand plastic surgery of the breast a lot more when I had focused on rhinoplasty and facelift more so, but it also helped me to start developing relationships in Nashville and referral patterns, and so I quickly got busy, and so it's just the God's grace upon me to really be able to get busy, because I didn't have a plan. It was a little bit of luck involved, and just the Lord's allowing me to get busy when I had no clue. I mean, looking back, I'm very thankful that I was able to become successful, because I just kind of was like, oh, let's go to Nashville and start a practice. I'm sure we'll get tons of consults.
Yeah.
When you're young, you just don't know, and so that's why I advocate for the young guys and girls to really consider doing a fellowship to get that time to get that maturity from a business and marketing and not just marketing, but learning how to develop those relationships with other doctors and establish those referral patterns, and really kind of get a strategy going to, okay, where do I want to be in 5 years, and make a plan.
For sure. So then you're in Nashville, but then I also noticed, by the way, in Nashville, did you buy a building? Did you rent a building? Where what was location like for you?
So at first I subletted a space in a med spa, and then with Dr. O'Shaughnessy letting me step into her practice, I started subleasing space from her. And then that was 2015 to about 2018, I really started to get busy doing aesthetic surgery in 2017, 2018. So I knew that I was going to end up doing all cash private practice, just doing aesthetic surgery. And so I started making those plans. And I think what young plastic surgeons will face is, okay, at what point do you cut off taking insurance and go to all cash? And so that's like kind of a big fork in the road for young plastic surgeons. And what I'd say is, you just, it's different for everybody, because when you're taking insurance, that you have your patient coordinator, instead of focusing on having the best possible patient experience for your aesthetic patients, they're arguing with Humana and Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they're trying to write letters for your patients, and it really takes up a whole staff to take care of that. And then the billing aspect, the collections, you're robbing your cosmetic practice in that sense. At the same time, you have people who depend on you, so you got to pay bills. So that insurance money coming in is nice. You're referring surgeons, you can't just leave them in the lurch. Your patients, you can't just leave them hanging. And so, there are different variables that everybody has to consider. But me at 3 years, I was like, okay, it's time for me to start stepping away. And so I slowly severed those relationships and made sure that there were other plastic surgeons and there were people coming in and people were interested in doing it. So it wasn't difficult. It was a natural segue, 6 to 12 months. By 2019, I was doing all aesthetic. And so with that, I didn't want to be down at like the medical center in Nashville, where, it's not exactly the nice environment. My, really good friend, uh, huge country singer, she got into a car accident coming to see me one time in the garage. And it was because, it was so small, and it was like the worst environment. Like the elevators were terrible. And she was so cool about it. She was like, you need a new space. And she was right. So I started looking in west of town, like west of Nashville. Belmead is a really nice area. And I found space here in 3,500 square feet, leased that space. Around that time, probably later in 2019, a great colleague, Dr. Alex Nine, who only did plastic surgery of the breast. He only did breast implants, breast augmentation, mastopexy. And he stepped away. He had a friend who died of, I believe, cancer in their 50s. And he was like 60. And he said, you know what? I'm going to enjoy the rest of my life and I'm going to step away. And so he reached out to me. He said, hey, do you want to buy my practice? And I hadn't thought about it, but I was like, I was doing a lot of facelifts, a lot of noses, but I wasn't doing enough cosmetic breast implants. And that can really be a staple for a plastic surgeon. And I really admire the facial plastic guys and girls because they don't have breast implants and liposuction to pay the bills while they're trying to build their facelift and rhinoplasty practice, which takes time. And so, I really give them a lot of credit for being able to do what they do. But anyway, I knew it would be good for my breast augmentation practice. So I went ahead and bought Dr. Knight's practice. It was financial sacrifice at the time, but that was the best financial decision that I made in practice was buying his practice because it really, I went from operating 2 days a week to 3, 4 days a week, and the consults just really started to come in a lot. And so,
That's the way everyone used to do it. If somebody was leaving, you were coming in, you were going to buy,
yeah,
but you're making it sound really smooth. Oftentimes it's not that smooth. Like, what did you
right.
buy and what value did you get from it? Because a lot of times it doesn't, you're not any busier because you didn't transfer the credibility from one surgeon to another.
Yeah.
So what was that transition like?
So I was very lucky. So I had been in town already this is my 4th year in town. So I had a little bit of, street cred, so to speak. And so he didn't have to stay on a long time to give me that goodwill. So another thing to young plastic surgeons, do a fellowship, learn private practice, learn how to run a practice and how to operate a business. Second thing is try to find an existing practice. Try to find a guy or girl, a man or a woman who is, mid to late 50s, early 60s, mid 60s, that is looking to transition out. Because, or if you can find a multi plastic surgeon practice that needs some young energy and they have space for you and they're already busy, I really recommend trying to find that. I think starting your own private practice and doing things your way sounds really good, but ultimately, when it comes to business, in operations, there are ways to do things that are best, and we're not the best at that. You're the best at anatomy, you know, operative decision making, deformity diagnosis. It's tough to be the best plastic surgeon and be the best accountant and the best HR person and the best operations person. And so don't, if you have the opportunity to, don't try and reinvent the wheel. Now, that may not exist in the market where you want to go. If your wife's from Cincinnati and no one is selling their practice in Cincinnati or looking to hire, then maybe you have to start a practice on your own. But what I'd say is if you can find that, definitely try and find that. And if you're buying a solo private practice, remember the main thing you're buying is the goodwill, unless they have it, quad A or triple A, HC, certified OR, if they have a lot of equipment, if they have staff, and then it's going to be worth more. So, you want to look at what you're buying, but the main thing is goodwill. Goodwill is basically the reputation of the surgeon and then passing that baton along to you and their patients trusting you. And some people say goodwill is worth nothing. I think in plastic surgery, that's not true at all. Goodwill is very valuable.
Hello, it's Catherine. If your practice feels busy but you're not seeing the growth you expected, there's usually a reason, and it's often something small that's quietly costing you revenue. That's why I offer a practice growth review. Now in this call, I'll take an objective look at your patient flow, conversion process, and retention strategies to identify where opportunities may be slipping through the cracks. You'll walk away with a clear picture of what's working, what's not, and the few changes that could make the biggest difference. If you'd like an unbiased set of expert eyes on your practice, simply visit CatherineMaley.com to schedule your review. In today's world, a lot of the young guys don't want to buy goodwill. They think they're going to create their own on Instagram. And so you just have to be so careful what you're buying and the value you're getting. And
For sure.
and it worked out for you. And I love that idea. So then you have this office, you have this place in Nashville. By the way, half of California moved over to Texas, Tennessee, and Miami, Florida. And hopefully you bought some real estate in Tennessee when it was still low.
We
So
did, yes.
yeah, good job. But now I notice you have two locations. So you have one in Nashville and another in Kentucky. So for
Yeah.
political reasons, or what was the thought process? Like why, there's this saying, one practice, one headache, two practices, 10 headaches. So
Yes, that's
anything like
so
that?
true.
Yeah.
That is so true. So basically, had my practice, bought Dr. Nine's practice, folded it into mine. And I did so well that, I was like, oh, why don't I buy another one? So basically, what was going on was in about 2021, 2022, private equity groups started knocking on the door. And so I've been having discussions with them for like 5 years.
Mhm.
I've never felt like any offer that I've gotten or any group that I've kind of gone down that road with was going to be the right fit for me. Part of that is because most of those are better for plastic surgeons that are a little older and are looking to transition, and they don't want to spend the money to try and recruit a young plastic surgeon. They don't have all the pieces in place to get a young plastic surgeon busy. Optimal the optimal scenarios, surgeon has their own OR, their cash pay booked out for 6 months. They have med spa, injector revenue, esthetician revenue. They have their own building. So if all those pieces are in place, then it's probably easier to get a young guy to come aboard and or a young girl to come aboard, and you can really help them get in there and hit the ground running. Whereas if you don't have all those pieces in place, you might not be able to help that young plastic surgeon hit the ground running. So in that scenario, I think that those surgeons might be better off bringing on private equity investors, because then they can help you recruit people. They can help you build out that infrastructure that can kind of complete the puzzle. So seeing that M&A activity, I thought, well, I've already done it once. Why don't we do it again? And so I kind of put feelers out there, and I was blessed to meet a guy named Dr. Jerry Eds. He was an otolaryngologist who was from Owensboro, Kentucky, and he trained at in Charleston at MUSC, did a facial plastic surgery fellowship, went back to Owensboro, was a facial plastic surgeon, and there was for many many years in Owensboro there were never any plastic surgeons, so he just started doing breast and body because there was no one else there, and he had been practicing for 40 years since 1983, and he was in his mid 70s and still energetic, and he's still very energetic. And he said, I want to sell my practice. He had everything: building, Triple HC certified OR, staff. The other thing he didn't have was the med spa. He didn't have an injector and esthetician revenue. And so I thought, hey, let's do this. So I bought his practice, and at the end of 2023, and he stuck with me through 2024, and then he retired at the end of 2024. And it's been, like you said, I mean, it's been 10 headaches. It's definitely been tough, but I've learned a lot. It's helped me become a better operator of my own practice, but it's also helped me realize that like I said before, you can only be the best plastic surgeon. You can't also be the best accountant. You cannot be the best CFO, the best marketing person. You can't take on all these hats. So, you know, I think in modern days, you're not just putting an ad in the yellow pages and going to the doctor's lounge and handing out cards. It's a lot more complex, and so you have to realize that you need help. You need good teams to surround you.
So then the sooner surgeons realize that, the better off everyone is, because they try to be the manager and the leader and the visionary and the front
Yeah.
man, and they try to do all of that to save money. And I think first of all, you're killing yourself.
Yes.
You're going to burn out, and I think everyone should do what they're good at, and it takes so long because you have to let go of control, and surgeons
It's
definitely
tough.
with that. Yeah. But I noticed you have a director of operations, and let's just talk about your team, because you did get some support. So what does that look
Yeah. Well, so the most important person on my team is my wife, Lindsay. And so she and I observed very early in residency. We got married about 3 years into residency, and we learned very early. We saw very early that oftentimes wives were too involved in practices, and that can be a problem. And the reason it can be a problem is because you have to think about things from the spouse's point of view, and I'm sure this goes for the husbands of female plastic surgeons as well. And so that is that when you see your spouse go through 100 hours a week of residency, up all night, call, everything you go through in residency and training, and then you start this practice, take on all this debt, work so hard, up 5:30 in the morning, doing paperwork up till midnight, doing all the operating of the practice in the med spa. It's very personal to you, and so it's hard for you to see people wasting any time at all. So it tends to foster a little bit of a sweatshop environment, I think, when the non-physician spouse is really involved, because they're like, hey, why are you looking at Instagram on your phone? And that's very understandable. And but you also can't, people aren't, what the spouse has to realize is there's a reason why your spouse is this high achieving plastic surgeon. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone wants to do that. So you can't run people like that. It doesn't work. And so those practices we saw in residency tend to have some turnover. And we didn't want that kind of environment. We didn't want to have a lot of turnover. So my wife is involved, but it's limited. She basically just does the hiring. She helps establish the culture, and basically just hires the girls and comes in once a month and gets a treatment. When she does that, laser genesis, IPL, Botox, whatever it is, she's there to also kind of check on things and keep her finger on the pulse. But she is less involved than I think some spouses are, and I think that's good. I think if she was totally uninvolved, I don't think that'd be good either. But so the team starts with her. And then we have a clinical side and an admin side. So, the clinical side, that is your revenue generation. So, if you want the mom and pop model, then that's good in the sense that your margins are going to be really high because your expenses are low. The problem with that model is that you're limited in how much you can make, you're limited in your growth. And, you go out of town for ASAP's meeting and, you just lost 50,000 bucks. So it's a good model for some people, and for people who are maybe a little more cost conscious and risk averse, it's a great model because your overhead is low.
Yeah, it's that surgical versus non-surgical. Can you live on surgical? And some of the surgeons have done that, but most of the time you need to have a backup. And if people aren't buying surgery right now for whatever reason, the non-surgical side can flow you until it comes back again. So do you where are you at with surgery versus non-surgical? How important is it to have both?
So in my practice, it's important to have both. I mean, what I've accepted is that my margins are lower, and I don't, a well-run surgery only practice might have 50% earnings, which is great. And my model is like 20 to 25% is great. Med spa is a little bit like running a restaurant without the alcohol. I mean, it's not a high margin business, but it is nice. I mean, it's nice to have the revenue generation when you're not there. It's nice to have offerings for your patients beyond what you do, so that you kind of keep people coming. I mean, the goodwill, part of that goodwill is your patient list. And so you're growing your patient list. It helps you generate revenue. For me, it was the right decision. And it definitely is, it definitely comes with more headaches and more risk because, um, you're not in control of every single thing that's going on at every time in your practice. So, if you are operating, obviously there's risk for what you're doing, but if you have two injectors and you have two estheticians, you have the risk of burns, you have the risk of, embolism and necrosis. I mean, the risks pile up. So it's adding to the risk profile, but in my opinion, I thought it was worth it. And so on that clinical side, we have a nurse injector here in Nashville, Jessie. She's amazing. She's very well trained and extremely professional. Amber is our nurse injector in Owensboro. Again, very well trained, extremely professional. Amber basically runs that practice up there. Then we have three estheticians down here in Nashville and one esthetician in Owensboro. Lo is our longest running esthetician here in Nashville. She's been with me for almost 10 years now. She is great, great person, and just, her when you watch the CMAs and everybody on that red carpet, they saw Lo the week before. I mean, she's really special, and we're really blessed to have her. And then on the admin side, we have practice manager Jenna. She's great. Runs a practice like really well, really efficient, and she's always learning and getting better. And then I have a patient coordinator. His name is Lauren, and she is great at taking care of the patients from the admin side. We're very blessed to have her. And then we have some great front desk staff too.
And they're all very good looking. How is that possible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of good looking people in Tennessee, and we're just blessed to have the cream of the crop. I mean, they're beautiful on the inside and the out. Really, really good team and really, really special environment.
Yeah. Wow. Whatever you're doing. I mean, it looks fun. They're very nice looking people. They're not like Barbie
Thanks.
doll good looking. They're just really nice looking people. Oh, love it.
Thanks. Yeah, we let them. And there's one thing that from a business standpoint you got to do is you've got to let your staff do do the treatments because they've got to be able to know about it and be participating in this industry to really talk to your patients in an educated manner. However, don't let them start looking like the when you go to the meetings and everyone looks really bad, overdone and just overfilled and all that. Just you gotta put your foot down and make sure that they don't overfill and don't do too much and start looking like plastic.
There's a balance everywhere, you know. You
Yeah.
want them to be drinking the Kool-Aid, but you also want them to represent you naturally, you know.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, you don't need any crazy looks there. It's not helping. But what would you say is the biggest challenge running a solo practice?
I think biggest challenge running a practice is just the operating the staff. I mean, the HR because we have great staff, but anytime you have 15 people in a little space, I mean, tempers can flare, things get crowded, people feel like their toes are being stepped on. So, managing the staff, I think, is the most challenging thing. And it's you got to educate them constantly clinically. You got to educate them, but you also have to educate them. They see, and we pay our staff very, very well, but they will see that, oh, well, you're making some money here from what I'm doing, and you have to educate them. Like, listen, think about the risk, think about the insurance, overhead, all these things that are going into you showing up and having patients on your books and making this money. So you've got to really educate your staff, and they have to almost be like little business people themselves to understand that. And the fine line for us has been, you know, uh, me and my staff, we are not salespeople in any way. Like we're very much like super conservative, like, oh no, you look great, you don't need this. So it's been, kind of training all of us that, hey, these people are here because they want to look better and they want to feel better. It's okay to suggest these things. It's okay to talk to them about that's why they're here. Yes, you know, so that's been the thing that we've had to kind of do a good job of as a team is realizing that like we're great at what we do and we have great things to offer and don't be afraid to talk about it.
Well, also, if you it would be sales if you were pulling them on off the street, or if you were wearing a sandwich board on the sidewalk, or if you were cold calling them and saying, do you want to look good and feel better? But you're not. These people have a
That's right.
problem. They think they have a problem. They've been looking at them in the mirror for a long time, and
That's
you're
right.
a solution to that problem. If we could lose the word sales, although I have a really strong sales background, so I don't mind the word at all, but let's just call it servicing. We're servicing patients who have a problem. You have a solution, and it doesn't happen by magic. Like they have an awful lot of choice. The goal is to using education and personality and relationships, you guide them to a yes. You
Yeah,
hit
that's
them
right.
over the head with it, but it also doesn't happen just happen by accident. You really have
That's
to
right.
You have to present yourself as the best choice. And it's nothing easy about that. But
That's
give me
right.
one big mistake you made that you wish you hadn't, but you learned a lot from.
I'd say the biggest mistake that I've made in practice was just overbuying devices. You know, for you young plastic surgeons out there, IPL works, it's great. CO2 and erbium, they work, they're great. Chemical peels, they work, they're great. Microneedling works, it's great. Those things, I mean, you can find great IPL devices, great lasers for very, very low prices. Do not listen to the reps when they come in. When they say, "Oh, you can, you pay your machine off in 30 patients." Well, what they're not, they don't include the overhead of the device, your monthly payment, the financing. They don't tell you that there's a consumable, and every time you do this on a patient, you're paying the company $100, and that eats into your margin. They're not including how much you're bonusing your staff. They don't include any of these things. So we weighed our practice down a lot with debt that we didn't need to. I mean, our devices aren't sitting there gathering dust. We use them, but I really could have gotten away with less devices. And I'd say that non-invasive body contouring, we're starting to ramp it up now that summer's coming along. But in general, those devices are like the gym. You've got to keep them up. And the way that they sell them to you is that, oh, 4 treatments, the patient's going to have abs forever. And that's just not how it is. And so, you know, as someone who's interested in plastic surgery and med spa M&A, I'm active in looking at practices and med spas for sale. And I would say the common theme to any med spa that's for sale right now is they have one of these non-invasive body devices. I won't name any names, but it's like, don't load yourself down with that kind of debt early on. No patient, maybe a patient here or there is like, oh, I'm interested in this, or I heard this is good. But in general, as a plastic surgeon, patients are there to see you. They're there for your expertise. Don't feel like you need to get some device to get patients in the door, because that's just not how it is. And we're seeing, I mean, I'm doing tons of facelifts on people that I did FaceTite on, and I love FaceTite. I still use it, but it makes it a harder operation, and it scars up the planes, and seeing these patients that had Kybella inject into their neck. I mean, facelifts are more difficult now because of these things. So just think, if you are a surgeon, do surgery, and that's your main thing. I mean, if you happen to build a great med spa over time, absolutely get the devices, but don't start getting devices right away. That's just an albatross financially around your practice, and that's my biggest mistake that I've made. And I'm glad I've done it. I've learned a lot, but I wouldn't do it again, and I would recommend no one else do it.
No, that's a good pearl, and I've heard it a lot. And just, everyone forgets about the part about how do you keep that machine busy. Nobody counts on the marketing side of that. That again, it doesn't sell itself. You have to put some money into that, and you're
That's right.
competing with everyone else. You're the market leader for about 10 minutes because the vendor sold it to the next guy the second he could. And it's just,
That's right.
I don't know. I would just say, tread lightly. Although skin rejuvenation is always your best bet. Like, we all have sun damage. Everybody has
Yeah.
white spots, brown spots. Like, just start there. Don't get too fancy. I just like a nice,
Yes.
normal IPL. It's just,
Yes.
it's so much easier.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If you can't have everything, just get something that a lot of your patients need. Yeah.
Yes. That's
So
right.
let's talk about marketing. It had to have gotten super competitive for you. You were there minding your own business, and then all those sorts of things happened. COVID happened. California happened. So what happened? How did your practice look? The competitive arena look before and then after COVID?
So we've been very blessed to. I love country music, and I very quickly became friends with a lot of people in music row and in the music industry. Got a lot of patients from country music, and that was a time like the 2015 to 2019. Instagram was still like kind of green and very organic. And I did not start my Instagram as a marketing thing. I would just post like, you know, I was in the Morgan Wallen whiskey glasses video and posted that.
Uh,
We did a Ann Wilson, My Jesus video was filmed here in the office. I'd go to concerts and or like talk to my buddies. I mean, it was just very organic and it was never anything that was meant to be like a plastic surgery platform, but it was just a special time in Nashville where everybody knew everybody and there was a lot of youthful energy, a lot of creative energy. And so we all just became friends. And it's just kind of like I say snowballed in a good way. And then around like 2019, when I started doing all cosmetic, 2020, when COVID started, then I started to get serious about having, more of a professional Instagram and not just me at losers or whatever. It was like it just it evolved into what is still really, um, we have probably the most real followers of any plastic surgeon around here. Like our following is very organic, and like our followers don't jump from like 50,000 to 100,000 to 70,000. Like, it grows very steady. And what I'd say is like, don't don't give into like this vanity to like have a certain number of followers, because things like Instagram are really great tools to interact with patients. Like patients will find you through Instagram. And so if you're a young plastic surgeon, just get involved with your community, start following people, start getting engaged on social media, and it will grow. Like it will snowball like that. Now, venues like TikTok, we again have a really great organic following. We started TikTok a little bit later than Instagram, but we don't get no one ever messages on TikTok like, hey, how much is a breast augmentation? Or, hey, tell me more about your rhinoplasty technique. Oh, hey, I'm considering filler. I don't know why that is. It's maybe less of a serious platform. But yet I'd say focus on Instagram. TikTok is good too. But just post what you're doing, and every patient that comes in is potential content. And not that you need to get every patient, participating in content with you. You don't want to have that kind of practice where patients feel like they're being pushed into fodder for your social media feed. But even if you're young and you're not that busy, you have patients that have unique issues, and you can talk about it, and you just never know where your practice is going to go. Like if you love rhinoplasty, and you're like, I'm doing rhinoplasty and that's it, then absolutely do that. But if you don't have necessarily one thing that you're like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, and you're kind of willing to go with the flow, your stuff will show up and you'll figure out your path. You worked very hard in plastic surgery residency. You worked very hard in medical school. You're the cream of the crop. You're extremely bright, extremely talented. And so, you're going to succeed.
how much time are you spending on social media?
So it depends. Sometimes we'll go a week without posting anything, and other times we'll post a lot. It just depends on, it's like what we do notice it when we post a lot, we get more followers, more engagement, more consults, and then we get busy with that. So we don't have time to post. And so, it's kind of like a cycle. But it's gotten to the point where we went for a long time without posting. So I've actually brought a full-time social media person on now, just because it was time. It's probably been time for a while for us. Um, you know, Mike Nyack in St. Louis, he told me he spends 2 hours a day, doing social media content. And I think that it's very valuable for us as surgeons because, you know, I played and coached football, and in football, video and watching game film is such an important way to learn what the other guys are doing, learn what you're doing, get tips on how you can get better. If you're videoing yourself in the operating room and you're really thinking about what you're doing and you're looking at what other people are doing and you're talking about it, you're gonna get better as a surgeon. You're really gonna remember, oh yeah, so I made their creases symmetric, their nipple to fold distance symmetric. Now that one's longer. I thought that might, maybe I should have tightened that one up more. So then you learn that. Oh yeah, that vector on that deep plane facelift wasn't quite superior enough. I remember thinking like maybe I need to pull this way. So you tend to be more cognizant of what you're doing when you're filming it and you're really thinking about making content. So I think it can make you a better plastic surgeon. And I know the society sometimes frown upon us, posting stuff in the operating room. But remember, our forefathers, like Halstead and then back in the 1800s, they were operating. I think you're operating. It comes from operating. You're in an operating theater, and so you had many people watching. So it's really kind of getting back to our roots in a way. And so I don't think we should. Don't think we should poo-poo it like we do sometimes.
Well, where else are you going to find some patients though? So like what marketing channels are you using that you can track and that create surgery for you?
So, Catherine, that is where I need to improve. So, talking about improving all the time and how you can't be the best at everything. I'm a great plastic surgeon. I'm not a great CMO. Like I actually don't track anything. We're terrible when it comes to that. And that's one part of my practice that over the next 12 to 24 months I want to improve on. And I think that's one good thing about when I talk to these private equity groups, that's one thing they do really well is they are really dialed in to the data science. And so whereas I'm just like, hey, will you donate to this auction? Sure. Hey, you want to do this print out? Okay, whatever. Instead of doing things like that, doing them scientifically, I think is a much better way to do it. I just don't have the time or the headspace.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I forgot to ask, what about influencers? I noticed you had a really funny Instagram post on one. Have you had good luck with influencers? Is it touch and go? What do you think?
Yeah, we, I mean, influencers is almost how I built my social media. I mean, and that's just luck. It's not anything. It's like I said, friends coming in and posting just organically, not even I mean, we weren't even, there was no influencer agreement or, it was all totally organic, just, and I've been blessed to have like three or four women who have really just helped me make my name, make my practice. And so we've had good luck in that sense. And when it comes to the less organic influencers, like when influencers will DM or will, message an influencer and be like, hey, would you be interested in working with us? The problem with that is that number one, Instagram's changed. So people aren't as influenced by influencers. Number two is, that girl was just at, another med spa 2 weeks ago. And then she's going to go to another place in 2 weeks. So it's like, it's really been, the power of influencers has really been diluted. And so I would say, don't, just like the devices, don't spend a whole lot of money on influencer marketing. Now, if an influencer comes in and you just have that rapport, I mean, I say it's like any other relationship. It's like if you just have that rapport and things go well, hey, don't chase it too hard. It'll happen.
Organically, if you have a really good fit, go for it. And if she happens to have a big following, all the better. But yeah, I think Tennessee's different because out here in Beverly Hills, it's out of control.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yeah, it's not like that.
I'm sure.
Let's talk about more of the mindset, personal stuff. Tell us a
Sure.
crazy patient or staff story you care to share.
Crazy patient or staff story. Well, so I'd say the craziest patient story would be that a patient told, so a patient basically, we had an injector who was, I mean, she was so busy. I mean, 1.8 million revenue a year and,
Oh,
just like the busiest injector in Nashville. She's since going on to start her own thing and she's doing great and we love her. But when she was with us, um, she's a little aggressive in her approach, and she injected a patient DA. She was injecting her DAOs and platysma. Totally, you know, was the patient was on board with that. And apparently she said, "Well, let me inject your chin." The patient was like, "Okay." And so she injected her chin, and then the patient is like, "Wait, I don't want to do that." She's like, "Okay, well, let me have Dr. Hatef. He can dilute it, inject some saline when I sent you down." And the patient basically walked out on the bill and was like, I didn't want you to inject me there. And then so she then posted a picture on like Real Stuff, one of these things, where her chin looked completely deformed. And we were like, how does 2 units of Botox do it? Because, we're very, we take people at their word and we're like, so I'm like, oh my gosh, we need to get you in. I need to flush that Botox out. Like, I need to put you on steroids. Something is going on. Well, we sensed something was wrong when we talked to her and she refused to show up. Well, what you didn't realize is, young people, they post everything from their mobile devices. When I looked on Real Self on a desktop, totally by accident, just happened to look because I was trying to figure out what was going on with this patient. It was it was a picture from like 7 years ago,
Okay.
and she must have had an incident at another med spa and tried to use that as like a way to say that we had botched her. And so that was just really unbelievable that happened.
That's called working with the public, you know?
Yes.
Golly, I'm sorry to hear that. And last question, tell us something interesting we don't know about you.
So something interesting that you don't know about me, I guess just that I love country music. We my wife's from Tennessee and she wanted to be close to home when we graduated residency and to raise our boy. And I knew that I wanted to go to Nashville. We visited here in 2010 for the first time, and the moment I stepped foot onto that carpet at BNA, I knew that this is where I wanted to be. And Nashville's changed a lot. It's lost some of the magic that it used to have, which kind of sucks. But it's also been really good for business. I mean, we're really growing and really blossoming as a city, and a lot of good restaurants, a lot of things to do. But it's a little bit different now. But I love country music. I love old country, new country, pop country, quote unquote neo traditional country. I hate that term, but yeah, I'm a big country music fan.
I'm like a closet country music fan because nobody can believe I love country. Like I can't listen to anything else. Love, love, love.
I
And
love it.
I was in Nashville for a conference and I had fried chicken over macaroni and cheese. It
Love
was
it.
so amazing. I'm still dreaming about it. And that was probably also 10 years. That was amazing. I would be bigger than a house living there though. That food is killer, but we don't eat like that in California. You know?
It's fatty for sure.
Oh my
Hey,
God.
this is your homework. You got to check out Turnpike Troubadours if
Okay.
you haven't heard them yet. They're a good
No.
Texas country band.
Okay. All right. I will. So, if anyone wanted to get a hold of you, your website is hatefesthetics.com, as well as your Instagram. It's Hatef, Hatef Aesthetics. And thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure
Thank
getting to
you.
know
I
you better.
appreciate you.
So glad to hear about your success. Good job.
Thanks,
Everyone,
Catherine. Nice talking to you.
yeah, that's going to take care of it for us today. If you would please subscribe and review Beauty and the Biz, that'd be super helpful when growing the audience. And then if you've got any questions or feedback for me, please leave them on my website at catherinemaley.com, or you can always DM me on Instagram at catherinemaley.mba. And with that, we will talk again soon. Top plastic surgery practices convert more than 80% of their consultations into surgery. Now, the difference usually isn't better patients, it's a better and more strategic consultation structure. Here's the real issue. You're already paying to generate those consults through marketing, staff, and overhead. But if your coordinator is not professionally trained to guide patients through the decision process, many of those qualified patients walk out the door never to be heard from again. That's lost revenue you've already invested to attract. So if you want your practice performing at the level of the top tier, invest in the people responsible for converting consultations. Learn more at convertingacademy.com.